Okay, I brought up Dolly Parton's chart. It's Penelope in London, and I wanted to look at this chart from different aspects. So, in the middle here, you can see her natal chart. And then on the second wheel is what's called a progressed chart, which some people may be aware of, or maybe some people don't know about progressed charts. And then on the outside of the wheel, we have a natal transit chart. So this is the current transits to her natal chart. And what's so interesting, if you look at her moon is in the 12th house here. So her natal chart, you can see you've got the moon in Virgo here. You've got the sun in the fifth house you've got conjunct Venus, and you've also got Mercury in the fifth house, all in Capricorn there. You've got also, let's see, Uranus, which we'll talk about, which is on her midheaven here, and she's got Pluto 10th, 11th house with Mars conjunct Saturn in Cancer in the 11th house, and Neptune is in the first house, and then you've got Chiron almost in conjunct Jupiter in the second house, and the North Node, her life path 2920. This is, it's actually here 29 degrees of Gemini here. So the interesting thing is that when we take this chart, this was the chart of the August the 25th, 2026, and she was 80. She turned 80 at her last birthday, which would have been in January 2026. And her family said publicly on her Instagram that she passed peacefully. I don't know the whole story, but I do follow her on Instagram, so I was aware that there was some conditions that she was dealing with and having treatment for. So the natal foundation of her chart, what we're going to do, because we're going to come back to this, but I wanted to show you this because this is solar fire, and it can give you an idea of how you can look at your own chart as well in the future, because there's more than one way of looking at our charts. So if I go to her natal chart, which is here, and what you'll see is that this chart is the 25th of August, August 25th yesterday, 19th, January 19th, 1946. She was born at 8:25 p.m. in Tennessee here. And we can see what's going on as a normal natal chart and a normal, the transit chart and a normal natal chart. So what's very interesting is that at our natal midheaven, it's nearly coming up to 13 degrees. It's 12:59 of Gemini. So she was used her voice, she was communicating all of the time in different ways, which is really beautiful. And it's in a very tight conjunction. Uranus is in a very tight conjunction at 13 degrees here to her midheaven. So that would have made her very out there, in the world as well. And it's as close as it can get really to the midheaven. That's a placement that speaks about public identity. It's the 10th house. It's built on being really original and reinvention from the very start. So she did reinvent herself from the very start. And when I listened to some of the videos of where she came from, many brothers and sisters in quite a poor family, and how she dressed up and was going singing with an uncle when she was very small. And the thing is with this, the Uranus on the midheaven, it's where we basically are unable to conform to any particular path laid out by others. And it's where we have vision that's always going to be our own if we have this placement, or if you have this placement, you have Uranus on your midheaven, then you will probably feel that it's like you will not, it's not one regular job, it's like many, many different things. And she was doing many different things as well, careers. She was getting the books for children, she was interested in the fashion side of things and doing her hair and the wigs, and she was also a singer, but also she was a songwriter, which did her really well as well. So she's left more than just a singing voice as she's left Earth at this point. So I was sad yesterday, and actually the night before she passed, I had a moment where she passed through my mind, and I thought, I wonder how she's doing without her husband. And then the next day, I was quite shocked to see that she'd actually passed. But we can have these coincidences in thinking, and then something happens. This is part of being human, where we think something and then we'll have a synchronicity of something else happening. So no one would have been able to argue her out of what she wanted to do with this Uranian energy in Gemini on her midheaven. And it's a calling that it's something that's walked alone, and the task it hands a person is to find their own authority. So it's not about others having authority over you, it's about having your own authority and then finding a way to offer that vision back to the world. So you can see the shape of that in everything from her sound, her voice, to her image, to the causes that she chose. As I mentioned, always slightly ahead of what anyone expected of her. And I think she was way ahead in many respects. Her natal moon, which is very interesting, it sits at 0 degrees of Virgo in the 12th house. Now, the thing is about the 12th house, that's going inwards. So I can see how that works with her. Like her husband, that life, the marriage of her husband was very private, that he did not really show himself. So that was the private part of her life that was kept very much private. And the other thing about that moon is that she would have had private time to write. That would have been really important to her. She wasn't just singing and getting dressed up all the time. She was doing lots of things, but doing work behind the scenes. So that's quite spiritual, having the moon in the 12th house, which is a much quieter placement. It's tucked away from the public Gemini brightness of the midheaven. And Virgo is not about, it's modest, it's it's unglamorous as well. She talks a lot about that as well, how while she made herself glamorous, that she's, I've heard her say where without all of her makeup that she doesn't think she's that glamorous or beautiful, but I think that's just maybe her thoughts about herself. I think some of the earlier pictures that I definitely seen of her, she looked very beautiful as a young woman. So she would have also been devoted to service. She was devoted, rather, to service and care. And the 12th house is the hidden, unseen parts of life lived behind a curtain rather than in front of it. So you can possibly see that depending on where the moon is really important. And that is a 0 degree Virgo moon. And it also sits alongside, not quite, but her Pluto is up there, and it's 10, 11 degrees away. It's a wide orb. So 10, 15, actually no, bigger, 5, 10, 15, a little bit more, 15, yeah. But it's in this vicinity. Her moon is not far, far away from Pluto. And then she's also got, alongside that, you've got the Pluto, as I've said, 10 degrees of Leo, and then you've got Chiron at 21 degrees in the second house in Libra. See here? You've got Chiron in Libra at 21 degrees. So it gets interesting as we go along. If you just want to hold with me, I don't want to make it such a long video, but it's very interesting to see how these transits and the progress chart worked out at the day that she passed. So there's the Libra Chiron, it speaks to intensity around self-worth. There's a lot around self-worth there and value that run underneath the sparkle her whole life, because that would have been the wound about her value and her worth. And if you listen to any of her reels or material, she talks about this a lot. It's a big subject for her, and she encourages people to love themselves and not to be too bothered by what other people think. So I think what's happened there is that she's taught people, she's been teaching people through her life to love themselves, based on the fact that she possibly had some struggle with that early on. And there was a sparkle going on the surface, but underneath there was probably some sort of wound. What's beautiful as well is that she has the Sun and Venus conjunct here in Capricorn, and then she has the sorry, Mercury in Capricorn as well. So you can, in my view, that would be a lot of discipline, but this is in the fifth house, which is joy, fun, creativity. It's other people's children, it's art, creativity, and music as well. Neptune is also music. It's in the first house. It's music and poetry as well. And then we've got the, let's see what else. So that's wonderful, that Uranian energy up there, which made her extremely, very unique and outward with the Gemini. Like she would, in my opinion, I think she'd say what was on her mind, and she was very graceful about what she would say as well. But she was very intelligent with this. And then also the North Node is at 29 degrees of Gemini as well. Her life path would have been communicating and somewhat behind the scenes, which the private writing would have been that as well. Even though that is in the 10th house, it's public. That moon down there in Virgo would have been her writing, and pretty, some of her stuff that she's done, there's almost a perfection to it. So that, but at the same time, she did mention in videos that, if she messed up sometimes, that it wasn't such a big deal. And I agree that we're just living life. So then you've got Saturn conjunct Mars, and there's restriction there of some sort, but there's also drive, and that's in the 11th house. And the progress picture we will look at, because that's very interesting as we go to look at another chart now. But if you can see the transits on this day, the Uranus would have been heading into, when we're 84, if we live to 84, we have what's called a Uranus return. And you can see Uranus is up here in Gemini, which is about 5 degrees or so here. And it didn't quite reach 13 degrees. And that would have done so if she remained and lived till 84, then she would have had a Uranus return. Mars is up there with Lilith and her 10th house as well. And then you've got Jupiter, which was conjunct her Pluto. Some quite heavy transits. Not heavy, but very, there's some deep stuff. Heavy, it can go both ways, whether it's heavy or whatever it brings out in us. And then you've got the South Node and Mercury. And so the South Node is in 29 degrees of Leo. And then Mercury would have just entered into the sign of Virgo, and the Sun was at 2 degrees of Virgo. If we look up here, we got nearly 2 degrees. It would have been going into the 2nd degree. And that is bang on her moon there, which is so fascinating. And the other thing, this Pluto would have been conjunct, or was conjunct her, it would have been exact at some point, maybe a year or so ago. So we've got the moon is conjunct Pluto transit, but that is also here conjunct her sun and Venus, literally. So this is quite telling to me, which I'll talk more about. And then we got Venus conjunct Chiron, which is creativity. This can work in different ways, but that's quite a fast transit. The Venus moves quite quickly, the moon moves quite quickly. But how amazing that moon literally was on her sun, and then the sun and Mercury were up here on her moon. So now I'm going to go to the progress chart, which is, I think it's here. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. I'm making sure. Let's see. So hopefully you can, because I can't see the bar above, and the computer crashed earlier when I was doing this, so I'm less than pleased. But anyway, I'm trying again. So we've got, this is the 19th of January 1946, but this is a progressed chart, okay, which is very different to the natal chart, because it's not natal chart, to the transiting planets currently. It's not different to the natal chart. I take that back. So if you look here, take into account what I've just said, and you look at this, what we've got is that we've got the Pluto moon is conjunct her Pluto there, which is her birth Pluto. And then we've got also Uranus doesn't move very much. Like it, what we're looking at here is and Pluto doesn't move either. There's 10 degrees, and that's probably 9 on the transit. With a progress chart, if you don't understand it, the sun, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples to not lose track of what we're trying to do here. The sun would move a degree a year. So if you look at her natal sun, then it would have moved a degree a year. And as it moves, it's at 20 degrees of Aries up there. And at that point, that it was squaring, this would have been yesterday and even today, because the sun would take a year to move another degree from where it is now, a full degree. And the moon would take around, I'm just giving you an average, 30 years around the chart. So the moon would have been coming up to a return moon. And we've also got the node does not move. When I say they don't move, it's so minimal that we just don't take it into account. We're looking at Mars, we're looking at the moon, we're looking at Mercury, and we're looking Mercury up here, we're looking at the sun, and we're looking at Venus. And also the other thing we're looking at is the ascendant moves and the ascendant and the ascendant. So you can see there's the ascendant there at natal 14 degrees Virgo. But as she's moved through to 80 years old or 80 years young, whatever way we want to say, I like to say that I'm 60 years young as an example, rather than adding the word old to things, because I think we're young as long as we're inwardly young. And then we've got the AC, the ascendant, is in Scorpio. Now, the midheaven, which fascinated me, the midheaven actually reached up to her natal moon on this date that she left. You know, it would have been midheaven, it would have been just literally 29 degrees, it looks like up here. It looks like it's 29 degrees of Leo, her midheaven. But her midheaven at birth began at 12 degrees of Gemini. So it's moved all the way to here. And when we go back to the solar fire, you're going to see all of the connections here. So with this placement, and we look at the progress picture, by the time of her passing, we know that her progress sun had moved to the 8th house of 20 degrees Aries, right? Here, square to her Saturn, which would have been quite hard, both conjunct, and Mars as well, both conjunct in the 11th house. And the 8th house is the house of transformation and death and rebirth, and it's very, very intense, the 8th house. But death is not like, things are dying all of the time, like the leaves fall off the trees, and then there's a rebirth and it's transformation. It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So personally, if you have 8th house planets, it doesn't mean that everything is just death. It's more than that. It's very whole. It's like cycles and cycles of time. So the sun itself there, and that it fits with what was going on with her physically, that it was square to her Saturn and Mars. You know, that would have maybe been quite depleting, because it's so slow moving. It would have been a year. The last couple of years, it would have been 18 degrees, 19 degrees. And as it's become exact, then to Saturn, that would have been very challenging. And the pairing, the Mars Saturn placement, had shaped her relationship also, like as a natally, to the community and to the collective body of people around her. And it reads as the vital self meeting real physical restriction at the close, because of that sun up here as well. And I returned to the progress midheaven up here, because the midheaven is, sorry, the progress midheaven, which is the moon, where that is, which is fascinating. And I will show you on solar fire what's going on there. So the transits on this day and the convergence of the sun at 2 degrees of Virgo, which I think it's better I probably take you back to the animated solar fire. So if we go here now, if you look again, you're going to see that this is the natal chart. You can see that I said to you that her moon is in the 12th house and that her sun and Venus are in the 5th house. You can see that going on there. And then you've got the progressed planets, where I explained that the moon moves, it takes about 30 years. I'm just giving you an average here, 30 years around the chart. So it spends some time, quite a long time in each sign. And that's really worth knowing when we look at our own progress chart, because it can be so helpful what sign it's in, but also what house it's in, because it can give us some understanding of what's going on. And when you look if we take here and we look at the outer wheel, which are the current transits of the 25th of August, the moon at 12 noon UK time would have been, so we're jumping over the progress chart, which is the middle wheel, and we're going right to the center. We can see that the Pluto, which is retrograde, is conjunct the moon as well, and we can see that touches in with her natal sun and her natal Venus. And there's a lot more going on here. I'm just giving you a few ideas. Then we've got that her moon, which is here, and her midheaven, which is so fascinating. The midheaven, which at birth it was here 12 degrees of Gemini. At her passing, it was 3 degrees of Virgo in the 12th house, conjunct her moon as well. And also we've got the sun at 2 degrees of Virgo, Mercury at 0 degrees of Virgo, and the South Node up here, all in this area. And the transiting moon, also you've got her Venus. Let's look at her transiting. Let's look. Her Venus actually was also up here. Her progress in the 8th house as well. So you can see the progress planets. You've got Mars. But Mars is very interesting because she was born with it retrograde, but it actually goes direct in the progressed, which is so fascinating to watch for those as well. Like I'm born, I'll give you an example. In my progress chart, I'm born with Mercury in Taurus at 23 degrees, but now my Mercury is in Leo, but for the next 20 years, it's retrograde. I wasn't born with a retrograde Leo Mercury, but in my progress chart, that's where it's at now. So this is such a wonderful tool to be able to use to see what's going on. But it looks to me, when we really look at this chart, it's almost like, I don't think we can say that she reached the peak of her power, because I just think, I don't even think about it's difficult to know with the cosmic timing. But what the chart actually shows is simpler, and I think truer to who she was. So her natal moon has always lived quietly in the modest Virgo here in the 12th house. And she was modest, in my belief, and very graceful. And Virgo is hidden in that 12th house. And at the very end, her progressed midheaven, the part of her that faced the world, arrived at that same degree, met there in her 12th house, met by the transiting sun, which I showed you, the transiting sun. You can see it's on the midheaven, and the Mercury and the South Node also. So the public self came home to the private one. So fascinating. And that feels for a woman who spent her whole career being enormous and like glittering and on stage, and who was by every account something much softer and more devoted underneath. And she was. I saw that real softness and gracefulness and love, but I'm sure She would have been a tough cookie as well. Like she wouldn't have messed around. She's with that Uranian energy, it would have been her way or the highway, probably, because she wasn't into having authority over her, which she did apparently with, when I think with Elvis, I think the song I Will Always Love You, apparently, you may have heard the story where the the manager, I'm assuming now, the manager of Elvis wanted the song for Elvis, and but she had to hand over the rights to her music, and she refused to do it. And she was very upset by that, but it was a very good move that she made. Her intuition was very strong there not to do that and protect herself. And that again, the Chiron, her value and her worth, that would have been something she would have been learning in this lifetime. If I look at Chiron here in the second house, it's really a really beautiful placement for it. So, it's where we do suffer actually through, there can be fear of financial insecurity, and it can be where early emotional wounds have led to poor self esteem. And when you hear her speak, as I mentioned, she spoke about loving ourselves. So I'm sure she struggled with that at some point. And in the search for self worth may mean that we're able in life later to help others find their own self-worth, and I think she absolutely did that. That was what she was doing. So Chiron is very interesting to look at in our own chart. In the sign of Libra, it would have been the imbalance of relationships, both personal and impersonal, would have caused pain, and it's where they one would have feel very vulnerable to injustice. So she would not have liked injustice. So maybe that thing where she was giving the children the books as well and set that up. That was because there is an injustice when you think that children aren't cared for and they're unable to read. So it's very, very interesting how charts play out and how we can learn about ourselves. And I'm sure different astrologers will see different things here. I wasn't really looking for, when I say this, I wasn't looking to sensationalize or when I looked at this chart or to look for something around death. I wasn't looking for that. But I can see that, there would have been a struggle with that sun here, 20 degrees progressed to her Saturn. That would have been a struggle here, physically as well. And it would have implicated the public, publicly. But that moon is very private. So she did keep whatever was going on. She kept it light. That's a Gemini. I'm a Gemini sun. I do tend to keep things light on, I can go deep because I'm Scorpio rising, but I can go into depth. But I also can have humor about things as well. But enough about me. I think this is, if there's anything you want to add to this chart, you can see her midheaven at her time of passing was 3 degrees. If I show you, actually, if I go years and I go back, this is 2026. So you can watch the moon here, how fast that moves. This is the progressed moon. We're looking at the middle wheel. And if I go back 1 year to 2025, the moon is at 0 degrees of Leo. And if I go forward by 1 year, the moon is at 13 degrees of Leo. And then if I go another year ahead, it's at 26 degrees of Leo. So it takes time for that moon to move around the chart. And if we go back again, we can see, let's look at Venus here is 6 degrees, that's 2026. This is the progressed, which we're interested in here. And if you go back, you can see it's 5 degrees. And if I go back to 2024, it's 4 degrees. I think Mars moves a little bit slower. If we look at Mars up here, I don't think it quite moves a degree a month, a year, sorry. So 24 degrees. And if I go back a year, it's 23, 23, 23, 22. So it takes longer to move. But the sun, if we go to 2020, her sun was at 14 degrees of Aries, progressed. And then if we go direct, we go to 2021, then it's 15 degrees, 2022, 16 degrees, 2023, 17 degrees. So that moves, you can see each year it's moving a degree. And this would have been August the 25th, 2026. So that, I think, would have been, as I mentioned, the sun progressed here would have been square. There's one thing I want to look at. I'm going to look at time passages quickly because I want to see this progressed chart, which won't include everything. But if I look at Dolly's chart here, and we've got secondary progressions, current date. So that also, the other thing is that that sun was in opposition to her natal Chiron here. So the sun, if you can just about see it, here's the sun at 20 degrees, sun at 20 degrees 12, and it's opposite to her natal Chiron. And then we've got the square. If I look at the, just before I go, the sun square natal Saturn, it's a time when the progress sun squaring natal Saturn that you become more aware of your limitations and responsibilities than usual. And the focus of your consciousness has come to light upon what the planet Saturn represents in your chart. So the structure of your life and your ego investment, which we all have an ego investment in some things, it's not a negative thing. In that period of life, it's where we could try to maybe have to organize our lives, and this, it can feel like a hardship, and it can pay off in terms of results, but also it's not where we should try not to try. It's that you should, it's almost like you should not try too hard, you know. It's like, because otherwise one can lose their joy of associations if we keep trying too hard to solve something. So that would have been quite challenging. But I was so fascinated by this Pluto conjunct Moon, conjunct Sun, and then the Sun, Mercury, South Node on her midheaven, progressed, and then the Moon. I'm going to leave it there. If you've got any questions about this, then ask me and I can do a bit of research. And then also, if you want me to look at your progress chart with you, I can do that because I have these tools to be able to do it and sit and talk about it with you. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more. We got the lunar eclipse coming up. I think it's in the next 24, 25, 26, 27, about 30 hours from now. Okay, catch you later.